Welcome everyone to What the Force and our segment Once Upon a Time in the Outer Rim, where we are covering season 2 of The Mandalorian. And with me is Ty Black.
Hello.
This show has been a little bit of a roller coaster, we admit.
Oh God, you think?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We both very much love this episode, so we're like raring to go to dig into it. But first, I just wanted to say what this segment is. It is a deep dive discussion show where we are digging into the mythical and genre elements of the Mandalorian show. We really like to talk about symbolism and mythology, and that's what we do here. If you want to keep up with everything that we're doing, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or your podcast app of choice. And of course, this will be a full spoiler conversation. So let's get into it, Ty, with the summary.
Yeah, so the summary for Chapter 11, The Heiress, begins with Din Djarin, the child, and Frog Lady making a rough landing on Trask, where Frog Lady has an emotional reunion with her husband. In this black market port town, Din is conned by a group of pirates who attempt to feed the child to a sea monster in order to obtain Din's armor. Din instinctively jumps in after him and becomes quickly trapped in the water, unable to swim in his armor. At the last possible moment, Din is saved by Bo-Katan Kryze and two others of the Night Owls. They quickly deal with the pirates and the sea monster, rescuing the child from its gullet. The three newcomers remove their helmets with ease, and Bo-Katan surmises that Din is a child of the Watch, a supposed cult of religious zealots who have attempted to revive the ancient ways, to which Din replies, "There is only one way." After another skirmish with pirates, the Night Owls convince Din to help them steal weapons from an Imperial freighter, in exchange for information on where to find a Jedi. While Din goes on his mission, Frog Lady and her husband act as the child's babysitters, showing the child what was to become of the eggs that he had so carelessly snacked on in the previous chapter. We then get a small glimpse of Moff Gideon as Din helps the Night Owls take over the freighter full of weapons, and a reminder that Gideon is so feared that his men will kill each other or themselves for the Empire. Kryze finally provides Din his information earned, and Din and the child set off for the city of Caladan, on the forest planet of Corvus, where he will find the Jedi Ahsoka Tano. Our final shot is of the Razor Crest, now outfitted with Mon Calamari patchwork, both inside and out, but at least it flies. Because that's what he asked for, right?
Yeah. He didn't say make it look pretty. All right. You know, before we get into kind of thoughts and feelings, we did have some kind of listener feedback from last episode about like what is the importance of binaries, because especially Ty, you really focused in on the binaries that presented in last episode, and because we're going to go into that again, I thought and we discussed beforehand, it would be really good to remind people about what we see in Star Wars as kind of almost the norm, and then why it's important to move past binaries, I think. So
yeah, exactly. And so this is the language that I tend to use a lot, especially after reading about it outside of Campbellian thought. I Campbell talks a lot about binaries that present a this or that, dark and light, male or female. His
big binary is past and present, and we exist somewhere in the middle of that. Right. And binaries, and when you can move past that, that's important.
Right, because myth is all about trying to make sense out of life and death. Again, another binary, right? Mm-hmm. And so and myth can be about any of those binaries. It could be about making sense out of a gender binary. It could trying to make sense out of a binary that's presented in a story between poor and rich, right? And these things are presented at the beginning of the story as being at odds with each other or at harmony with each other. Like these two things, this is the way these two things are. So either do not try to buck the system or like accept the system. This is the way things are. But the hero always learns that it is more important to find the middle way. It is more important to find the path between these two things, and to, although you accept these things are true, you do not accept them as your life. You do not have to succumb to them, right? So the binary exists. The binary is there usually in the story. And that's what, the previous episode we were talking about, the idea of the spider and the frog, and
dark mother, light mother. The biggest binary in Star Wars is the dark side and the light side.
Exactly.
Right? And the entire, like, the Empire and the Rebellion, the Mandalorians versus the Jedi.
Exactly.
And it's really important for us to think about what is the independent path for our main character past binaries, because that's when you experience a transcendent moment, thought, movement, direction that tells us that we are greater than the sum of our parts.
Exactly. Any introduction of a binary in story is automatically telling the viewer that these two things are at odds or at harmony with each other. However, that cannot continue to be, because the hero comes in and is always at odds with both of them. So the hero always has to transcend the binary. In the simplest way to say it, the hero transcends the binary for any story. And if the binary is presented, that means that the hero has to find the middle path, has to transcend it. So when we talk about like a binary was presented, but there was no transcendence or there was no resolution, it means that like it was presented, but there was no middle path found and there was no resolution between those two truths. I hope that makes sense.
No, it really did for me. But I'm very well aware with this concept. If you do have any questions, I mean, feel free to ask us in the comment sections on YouTube or on Twitter or, Facebook or wherever we post this episode, so that you can, understand this concept a little more, because it is one of the trickiest things that Star Wars tries to show but not tell. And it's very, very complex. You can listen to George Lucas talk about this all the time. You can listen to Campbell talk about it all the time. But Star Wars itself is very closed-lipped about it, except for symbolically, with things like triangles, sets of 3, things like that symbolically. So just keep your eyes open for when you see triangles, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And when you see, a group of 3, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Because to kind of bring it down to what a lot of people would understand, like Reylo was a binary that would have been transcended if they would have lived to find that middle path. They would have found it together, right? That is, in this most simplest form, a binary that is transcended. The light and the dark.
I mean, they're literally called a dyad.
Yeah.
So
exactly, that is the binary. Exactly. So that's the most perfect example in Star Wars.
Yeah, we have tons of other examples. Like, it's something that we have been talking about now for years. But it is one of the most interesting concepts in Star Wars, and how they show don't tell is also very interesting. And so we talk about it so that we can digest it and understand what it means and how it means. And Campbell talks about it, especially in, if you're looking for something that will talk about it in detail, Power of Myth series with Bill Moyers and The Mask of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay, on to the episode. Wow, golly gee, do I love Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah. She did what she needed to do with this one. We felt the love, right? We felt the empathy, felt the love, felt the care.
Yep.
It was so important to see that. And we know she didn't write it. She didn't set the story in place, but who's to say that, her director's vision didn't contribute to the point where, you felt it. Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
It came through.
Like, you think about it, and even the moments outside of Frog Mom, which we will go into, don't you worry, because she's one of my favorite, like, alien creatures right now. And also just the fact that she's a mom and all of those things is just so important to me. But how Bo treats Din Djarin. Because Bo Katan, introduced again in this episode, who we had only previously seen in animation, used to be part of Death Watch. Used to be part of this, like, cult of personality that existed, that thought they were the only way, right? The only way was the act of violence. And I just love that even though she wouldn't put up with any of his BS, she still had compassion for the path that Din was in, and that he was almost like a lost child.
Yeah. There was something really special about someone who has been there assessing someone else who is there and saying, like, I know where you're at. Like, you're going to need to go on the journey on your own. I can only give you some nuggets. I can only give you the truth that I know.
Yeah.
But she doesn't try to scold him or, like, tell him he's wrong.
Like, host an intervention. Like, she understands, but she's also, like, in her own place as well. What's really, really interesting is that Pedro Pascal's acting was incredibly nuanced from a voice perspective. Like, he at one moment when she's, like, challenging him, like, he almost sounds shaken a little bit, even though he's like, no, there is only one way, like, reaffirming it. I love what's going on, like, so much with this episode.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why I highlighted that in the summary too, right? When he said there is only one way, it was such a... It really kind of throws off the idea of, like, this is the way. And then when he says there is only one way, it's putting those cracks in the armor, right, figuratively, and saying that there is not only one way to be a Mandalorian. And they're showing us that with showing us Boba and showing us, Bo-Katan, and they're giving us all of these different types of ways to be Mandalorian. Even so much so that the first season was all about shaking up the idea of he wasn't born on Mandalore, he was a foundling, right?
Yeah.
It's constantly shaking up our idea of what it means to be Mandalorian.
Yeah. And I did want to go into a little bit about Bo-Katan's history, just in case, like, you were not a watcher of, say, Rebels, or maybe you weren't a watcher of the Clone Wars. Bo-Katan, Clan Priest, is a character that was introduced in the Clone Wars. She is the sister of the former Duchess of Mandalore, Duchess Satine, the former paramour of Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's such a good story. If you don't know about it, go and check it out. It's wonderful. Tragic, but wonderful. Inspired, I just recently found out, by Moulin Rouge, which now totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Satine. Obi-Wan.
Ewan McGregor.
Ewan McGregor. Oh, why didn't I see this before? But yeah, that's what's going on. Wow, head smack moment. She was the sister. She was basically part of Death Watch, which wanted to restore Mandalore to its warrior ways. She kind of got brought back to the fold when Maul ended up taking over Mandalore because she's like, this dude, no.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because Bo-Katan and Satine are binaries right there, right? Because Satine is the pacifist and Bo-Katan was the warrior.
Yeah.
But Bo-Katan eventually, and they're sisters. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why they're a binary, because they go together, but they oppose each other. But yeah, the funny thing about Bo-Katan is that she eventually comes around to the pacifist ideals. However, she continues to be a warrior.
Yeah, she wants to fight for peace, which is a different thing than just fighting to fight. And she also wants to fight for justice too, like restoring what was before. And she understands art a lot more, which is really, really interesting. Which Satine always focused on. She focused on the artistic nature of Mandalore, which is part of one of the cool binaries of Mandalore. It is a very artistic culture that is also a warrior culture. And both of these things exist. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that artistic value come out in Mandalore. Like, because we've already seen different types of Mandalorians, could we see even more different types of Mandalorians like Sabine's father, who was an artist. Sabine Wren, a character from Rebels.
Yeah.
End of Clone Wars, she ends up having sort of the showdown with Ahsoka and Maul, and Maul gets captured. Then Order 66 happens. She doesn't agree with the Empire, and so is expunged from Mandalore, even though she was the regent at the time. Maul ends up with the Darksaber at that time until Rebels. She doesn't end up getting the Darksaber until Rebels. She ends up going back to Mandalore to go and fight for Mandalore. I think they end up making some headway, and then something called the Great Purge happens.
Yeah.
And we don't really know what happened there, right? That's really important. So from the time that she had the Darksaber in Rebels, which is just before A New Hope from a timeline perspective, then it is taken away from her. Gideon has it.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants it back.
Obviously. Because she went to great lengths to try to find it in this episode.
Yeah, exactly. What I really love is that she's of the Night Owl clan. Like,
yeah.
It's a really interesting, and that's also like in the formation of her helmet, the eyes are like owl eyes. That's actually like something that has been brought into the helmets. She has this very strong connection with Ahsoka because Ahsoka helped her remove Maul from her planet at the end of the Clone Wars. So it's interesting that Ahsoka has stayed in contact through all of the ins and outs of the underworld that she has been in.
Yeah, it's a very strange connection there that I wonder if they're going to explore that in the live action, which is that Ahsoka's there's the connections with Ahsoka to kind of that. It's not called an owl. It's called the
Morai.
Yeah, the Morai, and then also
it's a conver.
A convert. Yeah, that's right.
Conver. And it, like total side note, Dave Filoni named that a owl type after his lovely wife. So. That's great.
Yeah. That connection, and then also just the connection with Ahsoka being like, the daughter, and the it was like, that was the same.
Related to Mortis,
and with the Morai there, So all of that connection is just very, very interesting to me because
it's high force mythos. There's a lot of force mythos happening.
Yeah.
And especially at the end of Rebels, when we see her, she's dressed all in white, and she has this like staff that has the circle, and it's like, Dave Filoni is a massive fan of Lord of the Rings. He describes what she went through as a transformation, like Gandalf, going from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, Ahsoka the Grey to Ahsoka the White. Like there's a lot of that going on. She has experienced a transformation over the course of what she's gone through.
This is the kind of stuff I'm thinking about for the end of this episode. And we'll get into that when we get into the myth. But that image of seeing Ahsoka in all white is something that I'm very curious about.
Yeah. And she's been promised to us, so that's really interesting, like both outside of the show with all the rumors and discussions and things like that, but also directly in the show to say, hey, you're gonna go and find her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I really loved the reintroduction of Mandalorians that are not the same type of Mandalorians as you, but are also Mandalorians, and he seemed to accept them as Mandalorians, which was a big growing step for him, even though he said there is only one way. He still let them keep their armor, so okay, Din Djarin.
Yeah, he's like, I've seen worse, it's okay, fine. Because he's met he met oh my god,
Cobb Vanth.
Cobb Vanth. Yeah. So he's like, whatever. You're not as bad as him.
You're kinda fine. Remove your helmet or whatever. I really think that it's important that he learned how to parent in this episode through a trial. And we're going to go into that a little bit in the mythic area and symbolism area. But like when he walked into Frog Mom's house, he's like, please, take care of him. You're going to be staying here for a little while. Expectation set. I expect you to be respectful. You know what I mean. Don't eat any of the eggs, kid. And it seems like they're starting to understand each other, like him and the child.
Yeah.
A little bit. Because they almost have a conversation when they leave Mom's house at the end. Like, can't we take one with us? And he's like, I don't need another pet. So.
Yeah.
I like the fact that he's talking. Because as a parent, you kind of start to understand the baby babble a little bit. And this was an important stage in the development of Baby Yoda because he's going to start talking directly. Instead of talking around the child, he's talking to the child, and the child is talking back, even if it's not understandable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Let's talk about Frog Mom and that reuniting scene.
Yeah, that was really emotional. I think a lot of people felt that because it was given the same kind of weight as it would have been given if it were to humans. And it felt really real. It came through the puppetry of it all and through the masks and the whole thing. And I don't think it would have been the same if it didn't have Bryce's touch.
Mm-hmm.
I really, truly, honestly think that. And I even wonder now, because she had that episode, if she made the costume choice for the Frog Lady to have a dress. I really, really wonder that.
And Frog Dad had an apron. Did you notice that? Almost like a butcher's apron or a baker's apron. Like,
yeah.
It felt very homesteady.
Yeah, it was very homesteady. It was very much, and like just the fact they gave them different coloring, you know?
And he was bigger and like had a green color. Like, I don't know. I love them.
Yeah, they made them a pair from the beginning. You just know it. They just had to have designed them together. They just fit so well together, and even like the chemistry that kind of like spoke through that was there. It was very strange. It wasn't the kind of care that I expected them to have with that.
Yeah. And then we had this wonderful like the baby's dropped off to go and be babysat. Literally the child is like, yeah, I'm being babysat. I've been given the rules. And Frog Mom like allows the child to witness the birth of a tadpole. Like, is okay with it. And like, this was so important to me, and I've been thinking about it like all day, because like these two scenes, like we got so little time with Frog family and baby Yoda child. But it's really important, because although you can raise a child on your own and the child will be fine, it really does help if you have a community, because children often need alternative perspectives that you as a parent might not have. And it just reminded me of the moments when like I was pregnant, or my kids are meeting a little baby for the first time, like these moments where they are introduced to something smaller and more fragile than themselves, and they learn how to nurture. Like, it's so important. And the fact that they showed that in these like very small and simple scenes, like I just remember my daughter realizing that she was going to be a big sister, and like there's a younger, like smaller version of another child in me as a pregnant woman. Like, I just remember those feelings, and seeing that look on Baby Yoda's face, seeing the tadpole like being born, was just exactly like that. And it was handled with such love and such care. Like, thank you, Bryce Dallas Howard, so much.
Yeah, there was something about this particular episode that made me think. It made me understand where they were going with the egg eating thing. It really allowed me to get into their brains and see like what they're trying to do with this character, because they're going to have to make the child not just be the child anymore, right? It can't be Baby Yoda the child forever, and they know that. Are they going to have it grow into the weapon wielding Mandalorian / Yoda character? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And like what they're doing with this character is they're going through like the terrible twos type of thing, from that perspective. It's like, they're showing that children learn empathy. They learn to care. They learn to care about life, because they have to actually experience life. They have to understand how precious life is. And I feel like pairing that with the idea of, the Mandalorian sex, the SECTS, the the pacifists and the warriors and all of that, it's presenting the question of who is the child going to be when he grows up. Is he going to be a warrior like Den, or is he going to be a pacifist? Is he going to be a Jedi? Is he going to be dark? Is he going to be light? Is he going to be gray? Like, what is he going to be? It's like really making us ask the question of, okay, what's going to come of him? So I think that's their frame of mind as the creators. I'm always trying to get into their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where they're at.
I mean, I do think that they very much viewed the child as a big ball of id, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I need to do to satisfy my needs. Screw everybody else. Like, that's not even a question, right? And like, if we're thinking like Freud or Jung, like, we're applying society's expectations onto a pure id type creature, the super ego, to create the ego, or, you know, the external pressures to create the self, beyond just what is the base instincts, right? Like, because when you're born, you're your personality and a ball of instincts.
Yeah.
Nerves, like, that's all you are, right? So your instincts are, I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat. And it's just, if he had done it and it wasn't played for gags, I think it might have actually come off better.
I agree. That last shot was unnecessary and misplaced,
like,
and poor.
Misplaced. And
yeah,
and it didn't work for us, both of us. It didn't work for lots of people on the internet. Yeah, it's a slight criticism. Also, the spiders didn't work for a lot of people on the internet. They got freaked out and they never watched that episode. They might just skip it because it was so freaky for them personally, like, who are phobic, etc., right? And that's okay. It's okay to misstep as a story creator. Just listen to people and be respectful of the fact that they have slight criticisms, especially if it's delivered in a constructive manner.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anywho, I did want to talk about the meta plot just briefly, that we did learn that Trask has been basically taking in the spoils of Mandalore and buying, you know, black market weapons, and ex-Imperials or Imperials who are still Imperials are buying those to arm up. It's a really interesting time in the New Republic period of time that these Imperials are still around, but it's the Outer Rim, so. We also learn Gideon is still alive and well, and his organization is very, very extremist and fascist.
Yeah. Obvious.
Both of those things. You do not suicide yourself for your cause unless it's an extremist organization.
Yes, they're very extreme, and yeah, that's something that, like, I think that Moff Gideon is there. You know, there's theories about him being related to the Mandalorian culture, being a part of Mandalorian culture previously. I think that, like, the idea that he was Deathwatch, it's interesting, but I don't think it's, I like the idea of him being Empire, purely because I think that it's going to provide that idea that within the Empire, there are people who are more extreme than, like, Darth Vader's loyalists, right? The people who followed Darth Vader were not as extreme, maybe, as, like, Moff Gideon's people.
Yeah, like, he seems on a level, like, very extreme.
I really like that idea, because it's like, there's so many fanboys that are so, like, Darth Vader is the scariest, you know, creature, monster in Star Wars.
Isn't it scarier that a man with such a nice face, because he, you know, he does have a nice face.
And he shows his face. He doesn't have a mask.
And he doesn't have a mask because he's a true monster. We've talked about this. We did a whole episode on masks and what they mean from a symbolic and, like, mythic perspective. And yeah, he shows his face because he is truly the monster. I'm still all for freaking redemption.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because no one is past redemption, even those that commit genocide and ruin planets.
Absolutely. I want to see this man break down. I want to see him cry. I'm still 100% for that.
And it's within the scope of this actor's range, right?
Yeah.
So we know that he is such a good actor that they could have gone to him and been like, you're going to be the worst like, think Darth Vader, but without a mask. Like that, literally, they could have sold it like that. And you're going to be the worst person in the galaxy alive right now. And we're going to redeem you. And he would be like, sweet, sold.
Yeah.
Like, right? Because he's such a good actor and he doesn't, like, he chooses his parts very carefully. So, yeah.
It's interesting. I like it. It's not even a theory. It's the way things are going. The theory is that he does get redeemed. That's kind of that's where it kind of goes insane for Star Wars. But, you know, cross my fingers. I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too. And not a redemption by death.
No.
Yeah. No.
Where are we?
I wrote down this one line. Don't believe everything you hear. Mandalorians are stronger together. When Bo said that to me was aha. Okay. So gathering of allies will literally be gathering the community.
All of them.
All of them, all of the disparate, different types of Mandalorians in existence out there, all of them.
Exactly. And it's really interesting because he might need like somebody like Boba Fett to unite them in a way that he didn't expect. Or, you know, there might be somebody like, we already know he's going to need Bo-Katan because he's met her and obviously like she's now become an ally. So there's going to be a regathering of allies, which, you know, that's obvious, but we haven't seen him meet Boba Fett, so he's going to have to. That's going to be a whole thing. I'm very excited about that because it's like, what does that mean? It means that somebody like Boba Fett, who's not a true Mandalorian, is going to be pulled into the redefining of what the Mandalorian culture is.
Yeah, and my good friend Michelle Whitlich, who hosts Unknown Regions podcast with her son, she mentioned that what they're doing with the Mandalorians very much reminds her of American culture and the question of what does it mean to be American? And it feels like a very apropos question to ask of the time period, especially now. Like, who is a Mandalorian? Somebody who has become one through being adopted into the society, come from afar and taken it on? Or is it somebody who was born to it, like Bo-Katan of Clan Kryze, who's wearing the armor that has been in her family for generations?
Yeah.
What does it mean? And that question is something that is, even in Canada, what does it mean to be Canadian? Well, are you somebody who is literally founded from, you know, a First Nations person who was born here and we colonializers came here and took over their land? Or is it, you know, something more complex because we are where we are and now we all have to live together? And that's kind of what I'm getting with Bo-Katan's statement, that it's like, you know, and don't believe that it's hopeless, that we can actually be stronger together.
Yeah. Yeah, she's faced those opposites with what she dealt with the extremists fighting for the throne, and she understands that there is only one way forward for Mandalore, and it's that anyone that is associated with Mandalore, anyone that cares about the Mandalorians as a people, they're Mandalorians, period. And
because it's a people, it's a creed.
Exactly.
Right?
He talks about evoking the creed at one point, and she kind of like looks at him like, yeah, but your creed's different than my creed, but she doesn't like call him out on it. She doesn't say that, but you can see her thinking that. You can see her thinking, okay, but your idea of the creed is different. But she doesn't go there.
Yeah, she's like, in good faith, we're all gonna just go along with this right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then was there any other moments for you in the episode that really highlighted before we dug into kind of the deep dive into what everything means and what it is all saying.
I'm ready to deep dive. I am ready to deep dive.
My last moment, and I showed this to my husband on the GIF, like the GIF of it, because he had watched it, the episode, and like we had watched it kind of separately, but I showed him the GIF. It's the last scene when like the ship, the Razor Crest, is taking off, and the like starfish type tentacle creature is falling and like is about to go after the child, and Mando grabs it, kills it, and then hands it to the child to eat. I've been that parent where I'm like, I grab like the snack food like thing in the front seat, and like I'm like driving and like trying to hand something to a kid in the back seat. Like, I've been there.
Yeah, actually it's funny that you say that, because it kind of reminds me of like my mom always saying when my mom was little, her mom was a single mom, and they used to drive around this old beat up Beetle. That's what she always used to tell me. We used to drive this old beat up Beetle, and the passenger door was always broken. So when my grandmother drove it with my mother in the car, she used to drive while reaching across and holding the passenger door closed. So that's how beat up it was. So because sometimes they'd come to a stop and the door would like fly open, so she would hold it closed. And my mom used to always tell me that when I was a kid, because sometimes when
was it a stick shift? How?
Yeah. Like it was like a stick shift type of thing. And so, but apparently, whenever she would go to slam on the brakes, the door would fly open. So when she would go to brake, she would somehow reach across and hold the door closed. And my mom used to tell me this, and I used to always think about whenever my mom would, if she ever came to a stop really fast, you know, like a parent's instinct, if you have a child in the car, you like reach across and you like keep the child from falling forward. And I would always laugh at her, because I'd always think about the story of her, you know, her mom reaching across. You know, of course, I don't have kids of my own, but I have done that instinctively to people in my passenger seat now that I am an adult. But as a kid, you know, like you have different memories, and like, you know, she had different memories with her mom, and I'm going to have different memories with my kids or vulnerable people in the passenger seat. So it's such an interesting parental like thing. Like I didn't think about it like that, but I like that you mentioned it, because I was kind of confused at that last scene.
Well, like, think about it, like the kid drops their like soother or their favorite stuffy or their toy, and they start to cry.
Yeah.
And you have to grab it one-handed because you're driving, or there's no place to stop, because it's like you driving or child crying, and both are a distraction. Right?
Yeah. I love that.
Like, soothe the child or grab the thing, you know, or just deal with the crying.
He's becoming a parent, and that's awesome. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a train robbery feel from a genre perspective. Oddly, like, not as much sea shantiness as I wanted, but, you know, the general feeling of a seaport was there. Also, train robbery or ship robbery was also there.
Heist
thing. And we're gonna get into the Night Sea journey in a moment, or lack thereof. But also the general, like, you know, for the Empire reminded me a lot of like Heil Hitler a little bit as a thing, and / the suicide like electro tooth thing that he did.
Oh yeah,
just reminded me of like when you see like very like you're watching a James Bond movie and the spy doesn't want to get captured, they take the cyanide pill. It's just that trope of like an enemy combatant who's willing to die for their cause.
Yeah, and it's not just a trope. It was a real thing. Like, spies.
Well, I know, cyanide pills. I know, but like, just we
really
see it more in in movies and television shows and stuff like that played with that.
Yeah, definitely. I liked the idea of it being electric and it not being so horrifying. Thank God. That was it was a nice choice for something so horrific.
Absolutely. It's so funny, this show. Let's dig into some of the symbolism that we have seen.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about helmets, and helmets themselves function very much like masks in Star Wars. You and I have talked about this. Check out our masks episode. We talk about the symbolism of that a mask is meant to be taken off. And same goes with helmets, right? Mm-hmm. It's to protect a vulnerable person underneath. Masks are also meant to hide. Helmets themselves also portray a sense of invisibility. They are not, like, think about all of the stormtroopers and how they always have to keep their helmets on. You are not a unique individual. You are part of the whole, right?
Yeah.
And so part of the interesting thing and the binary that we saw in this episode is that not only can Mandalorians of Bo-Katan's ilk take off their helmets, but they can also potentially remove all their armor and not be a warrior anymore. Or not need to fight. Right? Because we actually see the character of Koska Reeves, who was the one that was in the hood when seeing him on the docks.
Yeah.
She doesn't actually look like she's wearing her armor at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that a lot. It was a nice touch to show her more. It was strangely soft and strangely like, okay, like, who's this character gonna be? But then it also did show us that, like, okay, obviously they follow different rules because she wasn't wearing her armor. She wasn't wearing her helmet at the very least.
I also like that this is creating, like, just a lot of, you know, ways of being, and that there isn't necessarily just the way.
Yes.
I just love it so much. But in general, helmets are really, really important because they are meant to be taken off. We saw that in The Last Jedi. They're meant to show that this person is not fully coming to who they need to be. They're not fully showing who they are. They're trying to protect themselves. And again, we see often that Din is much like a child who was trapped in the armor as a way of protecting him by the creed that took him in. Right? He is still that child that was afraid in the Clone Wars, who was being attacked by droids. And he hasn't dealt with that yet.
No. Lack of flashbacks.
Absolutely.
No
Lack of flashbacks.
Yeah.
I did want to get a shout out to the Mama Core, which is the tentacle, almost like water sarlacc.
Yeah.
like water sarlacc that tried to eat the fish and then was fed the child in the egg. And in an attempt to get the Beskar, which was such an interesting, like, plan. Like,
yeah,
we'll just feed them all of them and then they'll spit out the Beskar. Like, how are they going to get the Beskar? I still don't understand that plan, but it's fine. With, like, her, Mama Core, they refer to the sea monster as glorious and cool and fascinating and interesting, and her. And when Mama Core eats, it's really cool looking. Maybe your child is interested in that. And then immediately in goes the child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
This ties back to something really important that Ty said last episode, which is
life feeds on life.
Yes.
And so that in itself is a binary, right? You know, you have to eat things that are alive, even plants, you know, are alive. in order to live. That is a binary in and of itself. However, the opposite side of that idea is that eat or be eaten. Yeah. That's the more violent side of life feeds on life.
There's always a bigger fish too, which is a,
that's the more humorous way of looking at it. Yes, there is always a bigger fish. Yeah,
and this is almost a Force-like retribution to a baby Yoda, right? And a child who had eaten eggs. Look, you're an egg too.
Yeah, literally, literally in the most symbolic way possible. Not literally, sorry, but like the fact that the egg,
metaphorically,
yeah, because he's in an egg. It's in an egg. It is an egg. It's little
pram,
whatever that term is,
his carrier. Yeah,
and I mean it is an egg, and the fact that it got kicked into the water, it closed up, and then what did the creature do? It swallowed it whole.
Yep. Egg like egg.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, eat or be eaten, or life lives on life, however you want to look at it. There's something that's being said in terms of, like you said, there's like a retribution in a way.
Yeah. And a lesson that both the child and Din needed to learn, that, look, you two are food.
Yeah.
Be careful about what you eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Figuratively and literally, because it's not just about what you eat, it's about what you take in, what you learn, and then what you do with that, right?
Yeah. With that swallowed knowledge, Costa Reeves, who's the, other female Mandalorian that comes to the rescue, jumps into the water, extracts the egg in a very birth-like situation, pops open that egg, and bundle of joy hands it to Din Djarin, hands the child to Din Djarin like a proud papa who's just watched the birth of his child.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there are a couple things happening there. Like, yeah, obviously, it's almost as like, yeah, the nurse is handing the child to the father in the delivery room.
Or the mother.
Right, because Din very much could be the mother in this case. But also, the egg, the pod is dented. Like, the child cannot stay in there any longer. It is now going to be discarded. And I know
the child can no longer be that kind of baby anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. That child now needs to protect others, needs to grow, needs to learn.
It's like the child grew from a baby to a toddler. Like an actual toddler. The one that needs to learn consequences for their actions.
Absolutely. And immediately after that, when we get the next kind of most appropriate child scene, like, it is setting expectations. The child is learning nurturing and empathy and all of these things to do with the tadpoles and the frog family. Din is speaking with the child, and the child is speaking back. Like, there's an advancement to this growth. And I actually don't know if we're going to get the pod back. Symbolically, the child has been birthed.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing is, like, I think in the first season, the pod was discarded. The first pod was discarded of, but then the pod pops back up again.
Yeah.
Which was a deliberate choice, because they probably were like, okay, we still need this thing because Din is not holding it all the time. He's not carrying him around all the time. But now I do wonder, are we going to go back to a pod? Because I don't think we are.
Well, and like, is he going to carry him in the side thing? Is he going to hand him? Is he going to get a backpack like a baby Bjorn? Or are we going to see the child walking more behind him? Interesting. Or maybe carry the child on his shoulders, like, I I've gone through all sorts of stages. But Childs is kind of like the same size all the time, right?
I feel like he needs to carry him because it needs to be more of a burden almost. Because he hasn't had to carry him. So
interesting. Yeah. And also having that like hepatic or physical connection with the child is also very, very important from a nurturing growth perspective too. Instead of just kind of falling behind, like he's always kind of floating behind, and the child is almost, in the previous episodes we've seen, almost just responsible for himself.
I love it. Yeah, no,
right?
Yeah, because it's almost providing like a male womb type of scenario.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting thing. I don't know if you delved into that with your whole like Dadalorian thing, but it is an interesting thing. I don't know how to explain.
Yeah,
the idea of the male womb. But yes, carrying the child would be a way for Din Djarin to experience that burden in ways he hasn't yet.
Yeah, and much like many sacred stories, as you go on your journey, your burden gets heavier. Right? So it's interesting.
Yeah. True. And especially with the fact that he keeps losing his steed, right? His ship keeps getting beat up. He has to carry everything through the desert.
Yeah. Not ideal circumstances for you're walking and you're holding the reins of your horse rather than actually like, being able to ride your horse.
Yeah.
The journey gets harder as you go on.
Exactly.
Yeah. There was a really cool symbolic thing that happened. And I've pointed out the two blue triangles that are on the back of Din Djarin's gloves and like kind of his like gauntlet type armor that's on his hands. There's two blue triangles and they face away from him, so it's almost like they're like little pointers. Like they're blue, so that's like, represents water and change and things like that. And at one point, Bo-Katan helps him out of the water, and one's pointing directly at her. And, these triangles mean like directions. Like your path is going to be through Bo-Katan.
Yeah.
This person that you just met is really going to be an important person. Why focus on that shot without meaning? Why zoom in on hands without meaning?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was very deliberate.
Last symbolic thing before we get into the super mythical stuff that we want to dig into is just sword symbology, because, the Darksaber is mentioned officially with its name, which has had many owners over the years. Yes. But the sword or the Darksaber is a symbol, very much is taking on an Excalibur-like role in Mandalorian culture, like the right to rule, and it's very much a divine or like force-given concept that like you're the right person at the time if you have the Darksaber, and everybody culturally follows you because you have this right to rule. And previously, one of the owners was Bo-Katan. She held it for a while. But I actually feel like she's going to try to find it and then give it to a different person, because she how she said that, I think she's decided she's not the leader.
She doesn't sound like the leader. She sounds like a Lancelot. Like she's like the right hand. Yeah. But she's looking for it for whoever King Arthur is.
Yeah.
Which might end up being Din Djarin at the end of the day.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
I don't know. It was a really interesting thing, and how everything was worded. She's like, I'm going to find a Mandalorian to rule, right? Like, so, right. I really love that everything has multiple meanings in this show.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always something that you don't quite expect, but I've been satisfied. I've been satisfied so far, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mythic.
Mythic stuff. So we looked at this at the preview for this episode and we were like, it's going to be a night sea journey. Yay!
Yeah.
It wasn't.
That one shot of Din on the boat, and it's like sort of rough weather. It's cloudy, it's grayish. And seeing him go out into the water like that, you think, okay, he's going on this journey. He's going on a night sea journey. It's getting darker, he's getting closer to his destination, where he believes his destination is. But what's so funny about this is, like, it's a total ruse. It's a total ruse from the very beginning. And the only reason he gets on this ship is because they are pirates. Like, they're pirates.
It's a lie.
It's a lie, yeah.
The truth was a lie. The thing you told me was a lie, and then he is still rescued by the truth.
Yes.
Right? Interesting.
Yeah, it's another trial. It's another gathering of allies. And this doesn't mean that we're still at the beginning of his hero's journey. We're pretty far into his hero's journey. You can gather allies and go on trials throughout the entire thing. He's still kind of, for me, he's still at the kind of the beginning of the world naval, where he is seeing the truth, but he's unwilling to, like, delve into it head first.
Yeah, absolutely. And this got me thinking, like, because instead of a night sea journey, i.e. the trick in the trial, he found nothing but women. Like, I think what we're actually going to see is, maybe even next episode, his night sea journey happens in space. And I didn't see this when we first started talking about night sea journeys, but I think it's most appropriate that because of how black it is in space, it would be cool if he experienced something dreamlike almost.
Yeah, and it reminds me of, like, when we were talking about Mando's first season, we were talking about the myth and that episode that we did about the first season of Mando, where I said, it's interesting that Din always goes to places that he knows when he is out in space. Like, he goes to planets that he knows about, or that he has enough information about. And he doesn't go to places that he doesn't know. Because when you're in the realm of all possibility, if you are trying to be safe, you're only going to go to places that you know of, even though you have everything at your fingertips. And so far, Din has been unable to go somewhere unless somebody makes him, or, he crashes or something like that. Din has been unable to, like, kind of go. It's just so interesting because it's like this middle point. It's like space is the realm of all possibility, and Din can experience things in space, which is what we have seen, because a lot of episodes in the very first season ended with him and the child just kind of, like, in space, not knowing, like, where they're going to go next.
And then having to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah. But it could be that the idea that you had in the previous episode we talked about, which was that what if he gets sucked in by a whirlpool in the water? Yeah. Well, what if that sort of journey happens in space? Is really, really, really interesting. Like, what if he gets sucked into a black hole?
Yeah. Or caught in something.
Yeah. There's so many possibilities with Star Wars. It's very, very interesting. So.
And he is in a ship himself, and it, but I do think that space might actually be the most appropriate place for him, because it is the unknown, the infinite possibilities, as you said. And it does sort of, it would be a transformational moment for him to no longer fear possibilities.
Well, and because the end point for Mando seems to be land and greenery, right? It seems to be a nurturing setting, especially with a child being kind of this forest creature of the ground. So him experiencing a journey within space would solidify that. It would like be that transcendent path in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is where my mind's going at the moment, but who knows what happens next week, and I'll be like, okay, well now it's not going to happen in space. It's going to happen here. I don't know.
Whirlpools happen in sand too, you know. No, I mean, like, it was just a really interesting concept. I'm like, it has to be dark. It's a journey into your subconscious.
I really like it. I really like
space is a cool place to do that. So I still think he's going to meet the dark feminine. I really do. It's got to happen. He's got to be tempted in some way. I also kind of think that the child might be stolen. I don't know why I think that at some point.
Because they keep flirting with it. Because they keep...
Well, yeah. Yeah. Because they also need a separation.
Yeah.
Right? A massive separation, like a full, at least, episode, to see who they are without each other.
I agree.
Yeah. Child is growing. We see that is so wonderfully with like the little tadpoles.
Yeah.
And him like almost like touching and bathing the little baby. Like,
yeah, that was another way to look at that. It's not just a symbol of the child growing up, but yeah, it's a way for the child to see that he's just a part of the cycle. Like he's just another, because you know, like when you're a child and you learn that like things grow and things die, you learn that you're not so significant. You learn that you're not so special, and it's a very bittersweet moment when that kind of realization hits you. And I think that maybe that was the opportunity for him to realize that. So that would be nice. Because that's a realization that you're a part of the cycle of life and death, and it changes the way that you interact with the world.
Absolutely. Did you want to talk about binaries, or did we cover that?
I'll talk about the second part of it, I think, which is that like the idea that life feeds on life, and the idea that, you know, you eat or you will be eaten kind of thing, kind of goes hand in hand. It kind of runs parallel to the Mando factions, like the Mandalorian factions of the warriors and the pacifists, which I've been kind of tiptoeing around while we've been talking about it so far. But this idea that, you know, we have these two realms of thought, which have been presented in Clone Wars, and, you know, a little bit in Rebels with like Maul and Ezra, you know, and, you know, this idea of like a warrior versus a pacifist type of idea. What is the solution? And then you had it with later Clone Wars with Maul and Ahsoka. And that ties into this story, because now we're going to revisit Ahsoka, and we're going to see who she is now. And we're revisiting, okay, well, what's going to be the new Mandalorian way? Is it going to be the Death Watch, or is it going to be the ways of, you know, Satine? So all of this goes back to the very, very basic idea of, are you going to accept the ways of the world, which is life feeds on life, eat or be eaten, you know? Or are you going to find a way between these ideas to maybe, you know, what Bo-Katan has done with her life, which is I'm going to be a warrior, but I'm going to fight for what is true, for the cause. Yeah. So it's that middle path, it's that middle way. So I just find that interesting that all of these eating things, like swallowing and eating and all of that, kind of all goes back to the plot
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Isn't that cool?
It's very cool.
Wow, I love this show so much. I know it has some problems sometimes, especially last episode with the gag, etc. But
yeah,
the fact that the plot is being reiterated in the symbolism of the show continuously is fascinating. We have 3 for 3 swallowing episodes.
There are layers. There are layers to this.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
I love this. The next one you wanted to talk about, which is the nets.
So I got to the end of the episode. They get aboard the Mon Calamari fixed ship, fixed in quotation marks, right? They like nets. It's their decoration, right? Okay. They enter into the cockpit. They sit down. They have their moment. They get settled. They're taken off. It's shaky. As they are getting into atmosphere, we have the moment with the, star tentacle type creature, starfish type tentacle creature about to attack Baby Yoda, and he hands it to Baby Yoda, showing us that not only are these nets a net, but they're also a web. They are a trap. They represent entrapment, right? And because it was a Mon Calamari that set them, it's a trap. Admiral Akbar in my head, I literally screamed out, right? I'm like, it's a trap. This is not going to go the way that you think symbolically.
Yeah.
Where you're going, you even said it, Din. You cursed yourself. It's going to be bumpy.
It's going to be bumpy.
It's going to be a bumpy ride. It's a trap. Symbolically, that's what nets are all about. And it's a fate that you cannot avoid, right?
Yeah.
Nets, they're all about the fact that you are now on fate's skein. You are set on a path, right? He's heading towards Ahsoka for good or for bad. And whatever comes in his way is now related to that. He has direction, he has path, but it's also entrapment. Things are closing into him and he doesn't see them. It also sort of relates to the Odyssey because Odysseus is very sad at one moment when he realizes that all of his life runs as the gods have spun it, right? And that's very similar to the idea that, it is the way of things. It is the Force. Mm-hmm. You're now caught up in the greater flow of the universe. So as soon as you run into Ahsoka, that means that the Force is interested in you, right? Because these avatars of the Force users, these very powerful Force users, literally change the galaxy.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. I just had a really interesting thought about that now that you said it in that way.
I didn't write it down in the notes that way. I'm sorry.
No, I just had a really interesting thought because it's for me, the next step of the journey implies that something really bad is going to happen. But
yeah,
but a lot of people are saying that maybe Bo-Katan was lying. I don't think Bo-Katan was lying. I think that Ahsoka Tano is on that planet, but I think that we can figure out. Now I have a theory, and I hate theories. I hate theories. I hate that I have a theory. But I'm gonna present it anyway because why not? But to break down kind of the mythology of what is said, what we know, right? Is that we have the names, and a lot of people have already been breaking down the names today on Twitter, which I absolutely love. Our little group of myth nerds, people were breaking down.
Shout out to the myth nerds on the internet. Woo! You know who you are. Pew pew.
Seriously,
I love them all.
I love them all.
You know what I miss? I miss the TLJ days where meta meant everything to our community. And we're just not there yet again with Star Wars. And it makes me sad because we miss it so much. But in my DMs and in my private chats, we're digging deep. I'm not as comfortable putting it out there on the web anymore.
No one wants to publicly post their meta because, like, why would you? If the story is not going to go on any of the threads that you supposed, what's the point? But it's so interesting because this particular story, it's not showing me that it's not. I don't know how to describe it. It's pulling the threads in a way. I just find it very, very interesting, and I want to keep seeing where it goes because it's still so almost elementary in its understanding of its own myth. I want to see this. Yeah. I want to see it play out.
Well, it's really interesting because, like, season 1, I talked about how it was a hero's journey, and then it was like we talked about it in detail, like when I was doing the deep dives with Alex. And then we talked about it in detail. And then a couple of months later, the gallery episode came out confirming that. That was weird for me. I'm like, what? But it was very easy to see the structure. This is more nebulous, I think, because he's kind of all in the unknown.
Yeah.
He doesn't know where he's going. He's on his journey. There's a lot of trials. There's a lot of gathering of allies. There's lots of experiences. And again, the World Naval, as you talked about it. So we kind of get an impression of where he's going, but again, it could be up to the storyteller pacing that we're just not aware of, right?
Yeah. If we surmise that this is going to be 3 seasons, then the second season is going to be the most, like, nebulous and ambiguous and, like, weird and experimental because they have the ability to do that because they know how they're going to finish it. If they're only doing 3 seasons, I don't know, but
I actually think they might do 4. And the reason I think that is because then there can be like the climax of the dark, like the pit of the unknown at the end of the second season.
Yeah.
And Filoni has been leaning more into 4-season arcs with Rebels, etc. So.
That makes sense. I can see that too. That doesn't change how I'm thinking about it. Actually, that makes more sense. Okay, so
go ahead. That, sorry.
Yeah, no,
that was
it's total
divergent thought.
It was a total aside, but that's fine. With that said, all we have to go off on right now to, like, kind of figure out what's going on in the next episode and in the rest of the season, honestly, especially when it comes to Ahsoka. So yeah, the idea of Corvus, which is something that, as I was saying previously, is something that kept coming up in our chats today on Twitter, which is
and a Corvus is the genus of the raven, crow, and rook bird family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Corvus is all those things, and if you know anything about myth, it's that crows and ravens and even rooks, like, have a very important role to play in myth, and they can mean a lot. They can mean a lot of things. I did find it strange that it would be the name of a planet that Ahsoka would be on, if taking into the typical meaning of it in myth, which would be that like trickster, or like almost like a signal of death. But then I came across this idea of the raven or the crow as a symbol of the Irish goddess, the Morrigan, which is, and if you're associating that with the Arthurian legend, it is nothing like that. That's Britain Arthurian legend. This is very different. This is the Irish legend, the Irish mythology. The Morrigan is how she is referred to, and she's basically a goddess of death, of wisdom, but more specifically of fate. And she's also the goddess of sovereignty of land and rightful kingship.
So interesting.
It's so interesting. And also, like,
it's like the equivalent of the Lady of the Lake in a way.
Oh, who hands out the swords? Yes.
Yeah.
So actually, it's really funny because a lot of scholars apparently have tried to connect the Morrigan with, like, Arthurian mythology because they overlap so much in so many ways. But I don't think that's because they actually overlap literally. I think it's more of the symbology of it, honestly. It's because the symbol, that goddess symbol, shows up in very similar ways in Arthurian legend as they did in the Irish legend, which of course they would because they have very similar landscapes. But in Irish mythology, that name, the Morrigan, roughly translates to the Phantom Queen. And
dope.
Yeah. And she's also associated with kind of like, she's a guardian, she's a earth goddess, you know, she doesn't live in the air, she doesn't live with the higher gods off of the earth, she lives on the earth. And also she seals the fate of warriors when she washes their armor in the river or in the lake. So when warriors before battle, if they saw her washing their armor, they knew that they were going to die. And it like helped them move on in a way, because they saw that the goddess was like honoring their death, their coming death, and like washing them, bathing them to be, you know, sent over. So, and the reason why this connects is because the Morrigan often appears in myth as a crow, like transformed as a crow, or she appears with crows around her, or she has like a sister or like sibling or companion that is a crow. And it's so interesting to me because Ahsoka is often associated with the Morai. And here, if she's living on a planet called Corvus, then what exactly is happening here in the lore? We don't know Ahsoka after a certain point in the lore so far, right?
We don't even know if the meeting at the end of Rebels is directly after the fall of the Empire and the establishment of the New Republic. Maybe it's many years after that point, like after this meeting. We don't know where it happens in the timeline.
So for Ahsoka, something we talked about prior, we've talked about this on the show before. Ahsoka has a problem because she is written by a man predominantly, right? First by Lucas, Filoni mostly. You know, she falls into the realm of the mother, maiden, crone archetype. And she's been doing this as a teen and now as an adult, and becoming, what if she is becoming an old woman as a crone? And what if she is becoming darker and more, not wicked? I don't think Filoni would ever do that to his character, but I do think that there is a trap of falling into this older, wise woman role where, you know, we saw her in all white. She has become a goddess and a great wizard of sorts. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder, and my ultimate theory is that what if she wants to keep the child? What if she wants to keep, you know, the child on her planet in order to train him, in order to raise him under her ways, and Din, because of his creed and because of being marked with the clan of two, cannot do that because he and the child have to stay together, you know? So I do think it's this is like one of those things where I wish they wouldn't go in this direction, but I like see it going in that direction just because of everything that we've seen so far with Ahsoka.
I don't know.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yeah, I don't know. So Ahsoka the White. I still don't know.
It's falling into the trap of the mother, maiden, crone without understanding it, without understanding that that's the same, it's like the same thing. I don't know. I find it's so something they would do. It's so something Filoni would do. I'm not mad about it. I just, again, like I said earlier, I just find it so fascinating if these are the points that they're hitting, because it means that, like, they understand so much, but they misunderstand so much, you know?
So what do they misunderstand?
They misunderstand that the point of retelling myth is to provide something new.
Right. And one, Ahsoka cannot be everything to all people.
Yeah. She should not represent everything that women are looking for in a story. There should be more women, or she should just be her own person, or both. Like, like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, she's never been a mother.
No, but they're making her, like, celibate, and they're making her...
Yeah, she's warrior priestess.
Right. Yeah. They're making her... They're skipping, they're doing maiden crone, but that's typical of the American monomyth. They don't want to make her a mother, because then she would have to have sexual relations with someone. So...
Yeah. And as much as I love Frog Mom, I want some human people to get together and have love too.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So
human people. That's all. Thank you, Star Wars.
I agree.
I loved what you said about, like, this is going to be a place of war. Unexpectedly. Like, it's a trap. Mm-hmm. I loved what you said there, because I like to Google the names, because sometimes Star Wars is very on the nose when it comes to its naming, but, like, they change a letter.
Yeah.
So they're going to the city of Caladan. And there is a place called Culloden. Caladan happens to be a calcium supplement, if you're interested. But there is a place called Culloden in Scotland where a war took place with the Jacobite Rebellion. And the Jacobites were a group of people who wanted to basically keep the divine right of the king in place. And that ties very interestingly to some of the themes that we're seeing in the show. Mm-hmm. And it may be nothing, again, but it is interesting that there is this war aspect to this location.
Yeah, it's like if I would have looked at Corvus or, you know, Caladan, and I would have seen anything like, oh, it's like this peaceful, lush land, or, you know, anything associated with, like, peace or even fertility in that way, like with Ahsoka, mm-hmm. I would have been like, that doesn't fit. Like, that doesn't fit with what we've been seeing. However, we keep seeing this thread of war and who has the throne, who owns the throne, kingship, you know, the rightful heir, the heiress. Like, all of these things are leading to a very similar myth in a way.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like that, like the Odyssey structure, you know, as well as the Arthurian legend.
Because, like, part of Odysseus's journey is to come home and reclaim his throne. Yeah. Like, that is like no lies about it. That is, he is on this trial and journey and, like, sea adventure, basically, where he's constantly being pushed aside because Poseidon hates him. You know, he's constantly being thrown this way and that, trying to get home because his queen is going to be, like, all of these suitors are coming to try and marry her to become the king of that location. Right? So he's trying to get home to his wife so that he can be king again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And it's
similar threads, similar concepts that we're seeing in the show from a very meta plot perspective.
Yeah. I like it. I like how the Odyssey sort of myth falls right into the Arthurian legend, you know, in very, very similar ways. You know, the rightful king, the rightful heir, a series of tests to become a knight, to become a part of the round table, right? Which could also be seen as kind of like the leaders of Mandalore, and maybe what we could be seeing as like a round table of Mandalorians from different backgrounds or something like that. Like, all of these things all of the things that we're seeing so far have similar threads running through them, and the implications are very similar. That's cool.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yes. Again, I think that's all we have from a mythic perspective today. Yeah. But there is some kind of fan expectations that I do have that I'm like, I kind of like I've been a Star Wars fan my whole life. I kind of just want to see these things happen. I want to see Ahsoka react to the child looking like Yoda.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a small thing, but I want to see her talk to him that way, or to be confused, or to be like, what? You know, or like, oh my gosh. Like, and there's going to be this instantaneous connection and potential ownership. She thinks she's going to own him.
I think so.
Right? Yeah.
I think that's going to be the conflict between her and Din. But, you know, it would be really cool is if her reaction was like, hey, little guy. Like hey, little guy. Like, that would be so cool. Right. Like, I don't need much. It would be so I don't need much as a fan. Like, I really don't need very much. I don't ask for very much. I just want her to kind of... I want her to melt like, a little bit.
Yeah, like, oh my God, I've never seen one of you so small. Like... Yeah, and the one I knew was small. Like, yeah, I just, like, or so cute. Like, oh my God. Yeah, like, yeah, I think it would be great. Because she might have known Yaddle.
Yeah, she had, well, I think like she had to have.
Well, I mean, Yaddle was there in the Phantom Menace, and that was 10 years before Attack of the Clones. The Clone Wars happened right after that. She was probably brought to the temple within that time period. She might have known Yaddle. She might have known Yaddle, which makes me happy too. I hope we see Rex.
You're such a Rex fan. You're such a Rex fan. I'm not surprised.
He is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. I want to see him in live action. Like Ahsoka and Rex being together would just make me so happy. It's such a small thing. I know it's like on some sort of level of fan service. Again, I don't ask for much, but there you go. And I think at some future point we will need to see some sort of Darksaber showdown. But now I'm questioning who's going to be the person that is fighting our Moff Gideon. I don't know. Could it be Bo who's like, hey, Ahsoka, can I borrow a lightsaber? You know, is it going to be Din? Is it going to be Ahsoka herself? I don't know anymore. And I think that that's like really cool.
Yeah, I agree. We don't know exactly where this is going, but we know it's going to happen. That's really cool.
I did want to bring up that 3 times during this episode, Baby Yoda was confronted with a squid type creature, a tentacle creature, and it was like destroyed 3 times.
Yeah. But
so I don't know what that means, but 3s are important in Star Wars. 3s are important in life.
So and like the first time he was confronted, he didn't destroy it. It wasn't destroyed. Well, it was destroyed, but it was
in the soup. It was stabbed by Din.
Yeah, but like we didn't really see. Like, it was just kind of like, oh, he made it not attack him. But then, but then in the next one, it was destroyed by the night owl Mandalorian, And then in the third time, it was sort of killed by Den in a way that we know.
Like squished and then
consumed. It's just like very, yeah, the threes are very important, and you can break that apart however you want to, but it was deliberate. It was deliberate choice to do that throughout, as opposed to another deliberate choice was the fact that, you know, the child ate the eggs 3 times previously, and there was no difference between any of those 3 times other than he was told stop it and he didn't. This is very different because each time is different and it's a transformation. So yeah, it's very interesting seeing that kind of played with those symbols. Cool.
I still don't know 100% what tentacles mean in Star Wars, but Star Wars is about tentacles and eggs and swallowing.
I love it. This is my weird stuff. I like my weird stuff. I loved it when one of the Night Owl girls, the one who was played by Sasha Banks. But yeah, when Sasha Banks ate, she ate one of the squid thingies in the
and there was a tentacle.
And like when she actually chewed on it, it had like a crunch, and it was so good. Like it felt so good. I like that. I like that kind of Star Wars. I like it when women eat things in Star Wars. It's like one of my things. Like when Rey is eating in Force Awakens, it was like, oh my God. Like it's so enticing because it makes you feel like you're in the world. And that's why I like all of the eating metaphors with, you know, the child, because children need to eat. And, you know, you feel like the world is more real and more lived in if there's food. And if they're eating it, and if it sounds and looks different than the food that you eat, right?
I DM'd this to you, but I didn't actually put it in the document. The thing about Din not eating.
Oh, yeah. The Din, yes. Goes hand in hand,
yes. So we know the child is eating and is becoming a person. But the fact that he never eats in public is actually really, really important. Because we never see him eat. He is not fulfilling himself. He is not, like, symbolically, he is not feeding himself and becoming a fulfilled person. That is what that means from a symbolism perspective. He is not becoming who he truly means to be.
Yeah. The only time that he ate so far in the series is when the woman, Omura, fed him. And he took off his mask, and it was like such a point. It was such a scene. And of course, the woman who
Bryce Dallas Howard,
Bryce Dallas Howard, like, making a point of eating. Again, also going back to like the very beginning of the episode where the Mon Calamari was like, "If you're gonna sit here, you have to eat." And Din was like, I'd like to pay for something different. So he gave him the coin, the Mon Calamari coin, and the guy was like, okay, I'll give you information, but also I'm going to make you eat while you're sitting here as well. You know, it was just like, she's doing these things that are very poignant.
They're very
thoughtful, yeah. It's very cool.
We love you, Bryce. Thank you. All right. I think that's everything.
It's everything we could think of, like, within the last few hours of watching it, sure.
Yeah. We might end up having to do like an episode where we talk about it after in the whole meta plot concept, because I think this show deserves meta analysis in the
I agree. Yeah,
too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool.
But thank you, everyone, for coming out. Make sure to like and subscribe, of course, and subscribe on your favorite YouTube/podcast app of choice. Ty, where can people find you if they are looking for you online to check out your stuff?
Sure. You can find me on YouTube, where I make videos about myth at Wit and Folly. You can also find me on Twitter at wit_folly and on my personal Twitter account at black_TYM. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is orchestral music composed by Christy Carew for What the Force. We have a Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Brad, Cheryl, Melody, Night Huntress, In Wild Space, Felicia, How Rude, Anna Perez, Macau Mom, Neil, Joe Allen D, Christian Luca, Josh Johnson, and Scott C. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other podcast apps. It helps others find the show. Check out our new channel on YouTube, What the Fiction. You can connect with us on Twitter at What the Force Show, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or on our website where we have expanded our content to include reviews, metas, and articles, whattheforce.ca, or on our Discord. Links are in the liner note. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.